Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everyday English Practice Podcast. I'm Emma.
And I'm Jack. We're really happy you're here with us today. Whether you're listening at home, on your way to work, or practicing before bed, thank you for choosing to learn English with us.
Today's topic is something small but extremely powerful in English grammar.
Yes, today we're talking about modal verbs.
Words like can, could, should, must, might, may, will, and would.
They look simple, but they completely change the meaning of a sentence.
And many English learners feel confused about how to use them correctly.
So in this episode, we're going to make modal verbs clear, simple, and practical.
No complicated grammar explanations.
Just real English, real conversations, and confidence-building practice.
And before we begin, if you enjoy learning English in this simple way, don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to the Everyday English Practice Podcast, and share it with someone who is learning English too. All right, let's get started.
You know, Jack, yesterday someone asked me something interesting. Oh, really? What did they ask?
They asked me, can I improve my English fast?
Let me guess. They used can correctly.
Yes, and the funny thing is, they didn't even realize they were using a modal verb.
And that's exactly what makes modal verbs so interesting. We use them every day without thinking about grammar.
Exactly. Words like can, could, should, must, may, might, will, and would are everywhere in English.
But when learners hear the term modal verbs, suddenly it sounds like a big, scary grammar lesson.
Yes, it sounds complicated.
But today we're going to make it very simple.
Let's start with one important idea. Modal verbs are helping verbs.
They come before the main verb and they change the meaning of the sentence.
They can show things like ability,
Permission,
advice,
possibility,
obligation.
and here is one very important rule you must remember.
After a modal verb, we always use the base form of the verb.
Not s, not ing, not past tense.
Just the base verb.
For example, I can speak English.
Not I can speaks English.
I can eat pizza.
Not I can eats pizza.
She must go now.
Not she must goes now.
This one simple rule fixes many common mistakes.
Now let's focus on our first modal verb, can. We use can to talk about ability, something you are able to do.
For example, I can drive.
She can cook.
They can play football.
Let's make it personal. Jack, can you cook?
Yes, I can cook, but only simple food.
Hey, that still counts. Can you dance?
I can dance, but definitely not professionally.
See how natural that sounds? Listeners, think about yourself. What can you do? Say it out loud.
I can swim.
I can speak 2 languages.
I can draw.
Speaking out loud helps build confidence.
Now let's make it negative.
The negative form of can is cannot or can't.
For example, I can't drive.
She can't come today.
They can't understand the lesson.
Again, remember the rule, base verb only.
Not can't understands.
Correct, can't understand.
Now let's talk about questions.
To make a question with can, we simply move can to the beginning.
Can you help me?
Can she join us?
Can they finish the project?
Notice something important. We do not use do or does with modal verbs.
We do not say, do you can swim?
That's incorrect. The correct form is, can you swim?
Because modal verbs are already helping verbs. They don't need extra helpers.
Now let's look at another very common use of can, permission. For example,
Can I use your pen?
can I sit here?
Can I ask a question?
This is extremely common in daily conversation.
In school.
At work.
In restaurants.
Some people say may is more formal.
Yes.
For example, may I come in? That sounds more formal.
But in everyday English, saying "Can I come in?" is completely natural.
Let's imagine a situation. You're in a classroom and you're late. You knock on the door and say, "Can I come in?"
The teacher replies, "Yes, you can."
Very simple conversation.
Now imagine you're at work.
Can you send me that email?
Can you explain this again?
See? Modal verbs are everywhere.
But here's something important. Many English learners say, "I can't speak English."
But sometimes that's not really true.
Maybe you can speak English, but you're afraid.
So instead of saying "I can't," try saying "I'm learning English."
Or, "I can speak a little English."
That small change in words can change your mindset.
Modal verbs don't just change grammar, they change confidence too.
Let's create a small story. When I was a child, I couldn't ride a bicycle.
Really?
Yes. At first, I couldn't balance. I kept falling.
But I practiced every day, and eventually I learned.
Now I can ride a bike very well.
That's exactly how learning English works.
At first, you can't speak smoothly, but with practice, you can improve.
And one day, you'll confidently say, "I can speak English fluently."
And that's the goal. All right, let's do a quick practice together. Repeat after us.
I can improve.
I can practice every day.
I can make mistakes.
I can learn from my mistakes.
I can speak English.
Great job. Now you understand can, ability, and permission, and you know the most important rule, modal verb plus base verb.
Next, in the second part, we're going to explore more modal verbs like could, may, might, should, must, have to, and would, and see how they work in real conversations.
Now let's continue our conversation about modal verbs. In the first part, we talked about can and how it expresses ability and permission. Now let's move to a word that looks very similar, could. Many learners think could is simply the past form of can, and sometimes that's true, but not always. Let's start with past ability. We use could to talk about something we were able to do in the past. For example, when I was 5 years old, I could swim. When I was younger, I could run very fast. Notice the structure again. Subject plus could plus base verb. Not could ran, just could run. Let's make it personal. Emma, could you ride a bike when you were 6?
No, I couldn't. I was actually a little scared, but now I can ride very confidently.
See the difference? Past ability, could. Present ability, can. The negative form is could not or couldn't. For example, I couldn't understand the lesson yesterday. She couldn't attend the meeting. Modal verbs are actually easier than many grammar topics because the verb never changes after them. Now here's another important use of could, polite requests. For example, could you help me? Could you open the window, please? This sounds more polite than can you help me? Yes, can you help me is normal, but could you help me sounds softer and more respectful, very useful in professional situations. Imagine you're at a hotel. You say, could you bring me some water, please? Or at work, could you explain that again? Now let's talk about may. We often use may for permission. For example, may I come in? May I ask a question? This sounds a bit more formal than can. Teachers sometimes prefer it. We also use may to express possibility. For example, she may come to the party. We may travel next month. That means it's possible but not certain. Now let's talk about might. Might is very similar to may. Both show possibility, but might sometimes suggests a slightly lower chance. For example, it might rain tonight. I might go to the gym later. It means you're not completely sure. Maybe yes, maybe no. Let's compare them. She may come. Good possibility. She might come. A little less certain. But in modern English, many people use them almost the same way. So don't stress too much about the difference. Communication is more important than perfection. Now let's move to another very important modal verb, should. We use should to give advice. For example, you should practice English every day. You should listen to English podcasts. You should believe in yourself. The negative form is should not or shouldn't. You shouldn't worry too much. He shouldn't eat so much junk food. Now let's talk about a stronger modal verb, must. We use must for strong obligation. For example, you must wear a seatbelt. I must finish this project today. This sounds stronger than should. Let's compare them. You should exercise, advice. You must exercise, very important. Maybe a doctor says it. The negative form is mustn't or must not. For example, you mustn't smoke here. You mustn't park here. That means it is not allowed. Now let's look at have to. Have to is similar to must, but there's a small difference. We use have to when the obligation comes from outside. For example, I have to wake up at 6 a.m. Why? Because my job requires it. Or students have to wear a uniform. That's a rule. External obligation. Now here's a very important difference. Don't have to. For example, you don't have to come tomorrow. That means it's not necessary, but mustn't means not allowed, so they are very different. Now let's talk about would. We use would for polite offers. For example, would you like some coffee? Would you like some tea? We also use would in imaginary situations. For example, I would travel the world if I had money. She would buy a big house if she won the lottery. This expresses imagination. Now let's practice quickly. Advice: you should practice English every day. Strong obligation: I must finish my work. External rule: I have to wear a uniform. Polite offer: would you like some tea? Great. Modal verbs are powerful because they help you express ability, advice, responsibility, possibility, and dreams. When you say, I can, you show confidence. When you say, I must, you show determination. When you say, I should, you show wisdom. And when you say, I might, you show openness to possibilities. So keep practicing because you can improve. You should practice daily. You must believe in yourself. And one day you will speak English confidently. Thanks for listening to the Everyday English Practice Podcast. Keep learning, keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next episode.